Have you ever stayed in a place where you felt like you were being watched? Not in a casual way? Not like when you catch a stranger staring at you from across the room, but in a way that feels wrong, like something ancient and patient is waiting for you to make a mistake. That's exactly what happened to me last summer. It was supposed to be perfect. Me and three of my closest friends rented this old beach house on the coast for a week of summer fun. Bonfires, beers, late night swims. The house itself was beautiful. Wide porch, creaky floors, big windows that looked right out onto the ocean. But there was something about it. The moment we stepped inside, it felt heavy, like the air was thicker, like the house had been waiting. At first, we brushed it off. It was old. Maybe it just smelled musty. But that night, when we settled in with movies and snacks, something strange happened. I remember it perfectly. The hallway light was on, dim, yellow, barely reaching the edges of the walls, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement, a shadow. It slid across the hallway floor, slow, deliberate, heading toward the kitchen. I looked around. Everybody was on the couch. Nobody was missing. But I didn't say anything. I told myself it was just a trick of the light. But it kept happening. Every night, that same shadow, the same slow walk down the hallway, and every time I looked around, everyone was accounted for. My friends noticed it too.
Hmm.
One night, Emily whispered, "Did you see that? In the hall?" We all nodded, uneasy, but we laughed it off because what else could we do? We made jokes about the house ghost, but deep down we were all unsettled. The turning point came on the fourth night. We'd stayed up late, playing cards, the sound of the ocean crashing through the open windows. It was past 2 a.m. when I noticed the shadow again. This time I didn't stay on the couch. I got up. I followed it. The hallway seemed darker than usual, like the light bulb was struggling to stay alive. The air was cold, almost damp, and as I walked, I felt this deep, sinking dread in my stomach, like I was doing something I would regret. The shadow stopped in the kitchen, and that's when I smelled it. Gas. The stove burners were on, blue flames hissing into the air, every single one of them, and standing right beside it was the shadow, not a person, not a trick of the light. It had a form, vague, human-shaped, darker than the room around it. It didn't move. It just stood there. I froze. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears, and then I blinked, and it was gone. I rushed forward and turned the burners off, my hands shaking. Behind me, I heard footsteps running. It was Emily. She looked at me confused and asked, "Why were you in here with the stove on?" I tried to explain, but the words caught in my throat. She didn't believe me. She thought maybe I'd turned it on by mistake. But I knew what I saw. After that, things escalated. Doors would slam shut in the middle of the night. We'd hear whispers in rooms that were empty. Sometimes when I was half asleep, I'd feel the mattress dip, like someone had sat down beside me, but no one was there. The shadow came back night after night, always walking the hallway, always stopping in the kitchen. By the sixth night, none of us were sleeping well. We stayed together as much as we could, but the house had a way of separating us. On the final night, I woke up around 3 a.m. The house was silent, too silent. No waves, no wind, like everything outside had been muted. I sat up in bed, and in the doorway, it was standing there, the shadow, not moving, not walking, just watching. I couldn't scream. I couldn't breathe. I just stared, and then, slowly, it lifted an arm and pointed, not at me, but at the stove. The smell of gas hit me before I even reached the kitchen. Once again, every burner was on fire, hissing into the air. But this time, something else was different. In the reflection of the kitchen window, I saw it. A face, not just a shadow, a pale, hollow-eyed face staring back at me, mouth open, like it was screaming. I turned around, and there was nothing. The next morning, we left without saying a word. We didn't even clean up. We just packed the car and drove. I never went back to that beach house. None of us did, but sometimes, late at night, when my apartment is quiet, I swear I can still smell gas. And sometimes, just before I fall asleep, I see it again. That shadow, standing in the doorway, watching, waiting. Tell me, would you have followed it into the kitchen, or would you have let the house burn? Have you ever seen someone who shouldn't exist? Not at the corner of your eye, not a trick of the light, but someone standing right in front of you, close enough that you can hear the water dripping off of them, even though they shouldn't be there at all. That's what happened to me one summer when I was 17, and I swear, I still see her sometimes when storms roll in. It was my last year at summer camp. I'd been going since I was 9, and by then I knew every trail, every cabin, every secret hiding place. But that year felt different. The counselors were strict, the nights were eerily quiet, and the lake, our favorite spot, always seemed darker than I remembered. On the second day, one of the new campers asked about the dock. He wanted to know why we weren't allowed out there at night. The counselor froze for a moment before saying, "Because of the girl in the yellow raincoat." We all laughed. We thought it was just one of those campfire stories meant to scare us. But I'd soon find out it was more than just a story. The legend went like this. Back in the 1970s, a storm hit the camp one night. A girl had gone out to the dock wearing a bright yellow raincoat. The wind was so strong it knocked her into the water. She never came back up. They searched the lake for days, but her body was never found. Some say it was the current that dragged her away. Others say the lake wanted to keep her. Since then, every time a storm rolls in, campers claim they see her, standing at the edge of the dock, dripping wet, her hood pulled low, her face hidden in shadows. I didn't believe it, not at first, but then the storm started. That week was brutal. Every night, thunder shook the cabins and rain hammered against the roofs. The air smelled like wet earth and electricity. And every time lightning struck, the lake lit up like a giant mirror. On the fourth night, I woke up to a sound. It was faint but clear, dripping like water dripping onto wood. I sat up in my bunk, straining my ears. Everyone else was asleep, but the sound kept going. Drip, drip, drip. I looked toward the cabin door, and that's when I saw it, a set of wet footprints leading inside. My whole body froze. The prints started at the doorway, trailed across the wooden floor, and stopped. Right beside my bed. I wanted to scream, but my throat locked up. And then, just as I reached out to shake my friend awake, lightning flashed, and in that blinding white light, I saw her, a figure in a yellow raincoat standing at the foot of my bed, water pouring from her hood, her arms limp at her sides. I blinked, and she was gone. The next morning, I thought maybe I'd dreamed it, but when I looked down at the floor, the footprints were still there, dark, damp, leading straight to me. I didn't tell anyone, not yet. But that night the storm came back, and this time I couldn't ignore it. I was lying in bed trying to drown out the sound of thunder when I heard it again. Drip, drip, drip. I sat up, heart pounding, and there she was again, but not inside the cabin. Through the window, I saw her. She was standing on the dock, the rain pouring down on her, lightning illuminating her silhouette. Her head was tilted slightly, like she was listening, or waiting. I couldn't stop staring. I wanted to run, but I felt drawn to her, like she was calling me. Against every ounce of common sense I had, I got out of bed. I slipped on my shoes, quietly opened the door, and stepped into the storm. The air was freezing. The rain pounded my skin like needles, but I couldn't stop walking. Every step toward the dock felt heavier, like the air itself was trying to hold me back. When I finally reached the dock, I froze. She was there, the girl in the yellow raincoat, dripping, silent, her hood still covering her face. She raised her arm slowly and pointed at the water. I shook my head. I didn't know what she wanted, but my gut screamed that I shouldn't follow. Suddenly, thunder cracked so loud it rattled my teeth. The dock shook under my feet, and in that split second of lightning, I saw her face beneath the hood. Her skin was pale, almost gray. Her mouth was open, like she was screaming, but no sound came out, and her eyes, they weren't eyes at all, just dark, hollow sockets. I stumbled backward, nearly slipping on the wet wood, but when I blinked, she was gone. The next morning, I told the others. I thought they'd laugh, but their faces went pale, because I wasn't the only one. 2 other campers had seen her that same night, standing at the edge of the dock, pointing. The counselors tried to dismiss it, but I could tell they were scared too. One of them finally admitted that the legend was real, that she always comes back before storms, and that if you ever follow her into the water, you don't come back. I never slept properly after that. Every time the clouds gathered, I felt sick to my stomach. I avoided the dock, I avoided the windows, but she kept appearing, always dripping, always watching, always pointing. The last night of camp, the storm was the worst we'd ever had. The wind howled like a scream. The rain came down in sheets, and in the middle of the night, I heard the cabin door creak open. I sat up, and there she was, standing inside, her raincoat dripping onto the floorboards, her hood tilted up, just enough for me to see the emptiness where her eyes should have been. She raised her arm again and pointed straight at me. I don't remember what happened after that. I woke up the next morning on the floor, shaking, with water pooled around me. The counselors swore the door had been locked all night. My friends said they never saw anything, but I know what I saw. I know what followed me, and ever since that summer, I see her whenever the sky turns gray, whenever thunder rumbles in the distance. She's there, the girl in the yellow raincoat, watching me, waiting for the storm. Tell me, if you saw her pointing at the water, would you follow? I woke up in the middle of the night. The air was thick and heavy, sticking to my skin. I could barely breathe. I turned my head, and that's when I saw her. A little girl was sitting in the corner of the room. She was brushing her long, dark hair in the moonlight, but her body wasn't solid. She was see-through. The faded wallpaper behind her was visible right through her chest, and with every stroke of her brush, a faint golden glow shimmered across the bristles, like fireflies trapped in glass. Then she stopped. Her head turned slow and deliberate, until her eyes met mine. She smiled. She lifted her hand. She waved, and then her lips moved, forming one single word. Hello. That was the night everything began. It was supposed to be just another summer weekend. I was about 10 years old when it happened. My parents had taken me and my brother to visit our cousins, who lived in a small house out in the countryside. That house felt old the moment we stepped inside. The wooden floors groaned under our weight. The wallpaper was yellowed and peeling at the corners. Every door squealed like it hadn't been touched in years. It was July and the heat was unbearable. The house had no air conditioning, so every window had to be left wide open just to let in the smallest breeze. But the breeze didn't bring comfort. It brought the sound of crickets, frogs, and the constant rustling of leaves in the forest outside. From the moment I arrived, I felt uneasy. It was like the air inside that house was thicker than anywhere else. heavier, as if the walls were holding a secret. That first night I learned what it was. I couldn't sleep. The living room couch was old and sticky from the heat. Sweat clung to my skin. I tossed and turned, listening to the floorboards creak and the faint hum of insects outside the window. And then I noticed movement in the corner. At first, I thought it was the curtain swaying, but no, this was different. There was a figure sitting by the window. A girl. She couldn't have been older than me. Her outline shimmered faintly in the moonlight, almost transparent. I could see the wall through her arms. Her dress was old-fashioned, white, delicate, like something torn straight from a century-old photograph, and in her hands was a brush. Every time she pulled it through her hair, it glowed with that golden shimmer, a soft, pulsing light that seemed almost alive. I wanted to scream, I wanted to run, but my body wouldn't move. She kept brushing, slow and steady, stroke after stroke. Then all at once she stopped. Her head turned toward me, her eyes locked onto mine. They weren't cruel, they weren't angry, they were calm, too calm. And then she smiled. She lifted her hand, waving slowly, as if she had all the time in the world, and her lips moved, silent, but perfectly clear. Hello. My heart pounded so hard I thought my chest would burst. I couldn't make a sound, couldn't even breathe, and then, just like that, she vanished. Her body dissolved into the air, leaving only the empty corner and the sound of my heartbeat hammering in my ears. I didn't sleep a second that night. By morning, I convinced myself it was nothing more than a dream. The heat, my imagination. But it wasn't. The second night proved it. I was half asleep when I heard my brother whispering my name. His voice was shaky, trembling. I opened my eyes and saw his face, pale, terrified. He was pointing across the room, and when I looked, she was there. The same girl, the same translucent figure, the same white dress, and that same glowing brush pulling slowly through her hair, stroke by stroke by stroke. She turned her head toward him. Her smile spread across her face. She lifted her hand and waved. And then her lips moved again. Hello. My brother gasped. He yanked the blanket over his head like a little kid hiding from a monster. When he finally peeked out, she was gone. The next morning, he told me everything he saw. The dress, the hair, the brush, the way she waved. It was exactly the same as what I had seen. And I hadn't told him a single word about my encounter. It wasn't a dream. We had both seen her. We tried to tell our cousins. They laughed, said we were making up stories. But then they said something that made my blood run cold. The living room where we slept, where both of us saw her, it used to be a bedroom, a child's bedroom, and no one had slept there for years. They didn't explain why. Maybe they didn't know, or maybe they knew exactly what had happened in that room. Years have passed, but I still remember her. The golden glow of the brush, the way her smile seemed so calm, too calm, the wave, the silent word, hello. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had waved back. If I had mouthed the word in return, would she have spoken? Would she have come closer, or would she have taken me with her? Now, on hot summer nights when the air is heavy and the crickets scream outside my window, I never leave it open, no matter how hot it gets, because sometimes when the house is quiet, I hear it. The soft sound of bristles sliding through hair, stroke by stroke by stroke, and I know she's still waiting. Would you wave back?